A tired, broke single dad was cleaning tables at midnight, just to keep his daughter fed. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't expect anything. But then he heard something. And what he heard will make your blood boil. Two men in expensive suits, sitting across from a lonely, grieving old woman, were about to steal every single dollar she had ever saved. She came from a grief support group. She was carrying her dead husband's pain. And these monsters were using that pain against her. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody stopped them. Except one exhausted waiter, with a daughter at home, and nothing in his pocket. He walked over slowly, set down a bread basket nobody ordered, leaned in close, and whispered just 4 words. 4 words that stopped a $1 million scam. 4 words that changed 2 lives forever. 4 words that proved the poorest man in the room can sometimes be the richest in heart. Stay till the end. Because the twist about this woman's hidden wealth will absolutely melt your heart. The dinner rush at Harlow's Steakhouse was the kind of chaos that made Marcus Reed feel alive. Plates stacked up his forearm like armor, the sound of sizzling butter and clinking glasses filling the air around him as he moved between tables with the practiced grace of a man who had been doing this for 11 years. He was 41, broad-shouldered, with calloused hands that had once gripped a carpenter's hammer and now balanced filet mignon for strangers who never looked him in the eye. That was fine. Marcus didn't need to be seen. He needed the tips. His daughter, Lily, was 9 years old and asleep by the time he got home most nights. He'd check on her in the soft dark of her bedroom, her small face peaceful, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, and that was enough. That was everything. Tonight, though, something felt different. Table 14 had been nursing their drinks for nearly 2 hours. 2 men in suits that cost more than Marcus made in a month. One was older, silver-haired, with the kind of tan you only get from a boat. The other was younger, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and a phone he kept glancing at beneath the table. The third person at the table was a woman named Eleanor Briggs. Marcus knew her name because he'd taken her reservation himself. She came in every few months, always alone, always ordered the lamb chops and a glass of Bordeaux. She was in her mid-60s, soft-spoken, with white hair pinned up simply and a worn cardigan that looked like it had survived several winters. She tipped generously and always said thank you like she meant it, not like a transaction, but like a genuine acknowledgement of his existence. Tonight, she had not ordered the lamb chops. Tonight, she sat across from 2 men Marcus had never seen before, and she looked uncomfortable in the way that quiet, trusting people look uncomfortable when they don't yet realize they're in danger. Marcus refilled the water glasses. The returns are guaranteed, the silver-haired man, Hargrove, the younger one had called him, was saying smoothly. 12% annually, minimum. We've never had a client walk away disappointed. My late husband always told me to be careful with investments, Eleanor said softly. He was a very practical man. And he was right to say that, Hargrove replied, nodding with practiced empathy. Which is exactly why this is structured the way it is. Fully protected. Fully insured. Eleanor, you'd be putting your money to work, not gambling with it. Marcus set down the water pitcher and moved to the service station nearby, pretending to organize the bread baskets. The younger man, Driscoll, leaned forward. We just need the initial transfer authorization tonight. The window closes at midnight. That's just how the fund operates. Midnight deadline. Marcus felt something cold slide down the back of his neck. He'd heard that before. Not at a restaurant. At a kitchen table, 3 years ago, when a man in a cheap suit had sat across from his mother-in-law and used those exact words. Window closes at midnight. They'd taken $60,000 from a 70-year-old woman who had spent 40 years saving it. He drifted closer. I suppose if it's as secure as you say. Eleanor was reaching into her handbag. She pulled out a small leather notebook, the kind people use for important numbers, the kind that meant she had come here tonight already half convinced. "It is," Hargrove said warmly. "You have my word." Marcus stepped forward and set down a bread basket that nobody had asked for. And then, quietly, leaning just slightly toward Eleanor, he said 4 words. Asterisk, don't sign anything tonight. Asterisk. The table went silent. Hargrove looked up at him with the cold, flat eyes of a man who had been interrupted mid-performance. "Excuse me?" Marcus straightened. His heart was hammering, but his voice was level. "I'm sorry to intrude. Can I get anyone a refill?" Eleanor was looking at him. Not with confusion. With something sharper, recognition, maybe. The look of someone whose gut had been saying the same thing all evening but who needed one other human being to say it out loud. Driscoll's jaw tightened. "We're fine. Thank you." "Of course." Marcus smiled politely and stepped away. He watched from across the restaurant. Eleanor closed her leather notebook. She asked the men a question. He couldn't hear it from where he stood, but he saw the shift. She was sitting differently now. Shoulders back. Chin level. The question she asked made Hargrove pause just a half-second too long before answering, and that half-second was its own answer. 20 minutes later, the 2 men paid their bill, in cash, Marcus noticed, and left. Eleanor sat alone for a moment. Then she raised her hand, and Marcus came over. "Could I get a glass of Bordeaux?" she asked. "And perhaps, if you have a moment, could you sit with me for just a minute?" Marcus glanced around the restaurant. The rush was dying down. His manager was in the back. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat. "Those men," Eleanor said carefully. "You recognized something." "I recognized the deadline," Marcus said. "Midnight windows and guaranteed returns. I've seen that before." She exhaled slowly. "I nearly gave them my account information tonight." She paused. "I've been lonely since my husband passed. They came recommended through a grief support group, can you believe that? They find people at grief support groups." Marcus's chest ached at that. The specific cruelty of it. "I'm going to call my attorney in the morning," Eleanor said firmly. "And perhaps the police." "Good," Marcus said simply. She looked at him for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Marcus." "You have a family, Marcus?" He smiled. "A daughter. She's 9. Her name is Lily." "That's a beautiful name." Eleanor turned her wine glass slowly in her fingers. "My husband and I never had children. I sometimes think that's why I'm so easily taken advantage of. There's no one watching out for me." "There's someone watching out for you tonight," Marcus said. She smiled at that, a real smile, the kind that reached the eyes. He didn't think about it much after that. He went home, checked on Lily, ate cold pasta standing over the sink, and went to bed. That was his life, and he didn't resent it. He had made choices, some good, some hard, and Lily was the result of all of them, so how could he regret any of it? 2 weeks passed. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, a woman walked into Harlow's steakhouse before the dinner rush and asked for Marcus by name. It was Eleanor Briggs. She was dressed the same as always, simple, modest, that worn cardigan. But she was accompanied by a man in a suit who introduced himself as her attorney, and she carried an envelope. "I did some checking after our conversation," Eleanor said, sitting across from him at an empty table. Those men, Hargrove and Driscoll, had done this before. 4 times, in 4 different cities. The police were able to use my account of the meeting to build on an existing case. She paused. "They were arrested last Thursday." Marcus sat back. Eleanor, that's incredible." "It is." She folded her hands. But that's not entirely why I'm here. She looked at him steadily. My husband was a very quiet man, Marcus. He didn't believe in showing off. When he passed 18 months ago, I discovered that our farm, the one his grandfather built, had been sitting on a natural gas reserve for decades. He knew. He never told a soul. He thought it would change us. Marcus wasn't sure what to say. I am not a poor woman, Eleanor said simply. I dress like one because my husband dressed like one, and I loved him, so I dress like him. But I am not poor. She slid the envelope across the table. This is not charity. It is not pity. It is one person recognizing that another person acted with integrity at a moment when they did not have to, and choosing to respond in kind. Marcus opened the envelope. He sat very still for a long time. Eleanor, he said quietly. This is enough for your daughter's education, she said. And perhaps a few repairs to whatever needs repairing in your life. We all have something that needs repairing. His eyes were stinging. He pressed his thumb and forefinger against them, embarrassed. Thank you, he managed. No, Eleanor said softly, and she put her hand briefly over his. Thank you, Marcus. For 4 words. For sitting down. For seeing me. She stood, buttoned her cardigan, and walked out into the afternoon light. Marcus sat alone at the table for a long time, the envelope in his hands, thinking about how the smallest moments, a water refill, a bread basket nobody ordered, for quiet words spoken into the right silence, could change the entire shape of a life. Outside, the world moved on, indifferent and rushing. Inside, something had shifted. And it was enough.